A mother wrongfully convicted of strangling her 13-year-old daughter spent 13 years of a 25-year sentence in prison for a crime that for certainty she did not commit. Found to be innocent by DNA testing, she then sued the state of New York for $2.7 million. But unfortunately, all the money in the world could not prevent her death. The cause? Cancer. My name is Mason Schmidt, and this is her story.
Name is Linda Jack. She had a troubling childhood in which she then became pregnant with her firstborn daughter at the age of 16. Then, 14 years later, at the age of 30, she was convicted of strangling her 13-year-old daughter, Chrislyn Gerand, to death. She was convicted because of one eyewitness who was drunk at the time and knew that Mrs. Jack was going through a hard time states that she admitted she killed her very own daughter in cold blood. But does that make someone a murderer? That is the question many prosecutors wouldn't let go of. After being convicted to 25 years in prison, she spent 13 years of the sentence in jail, later to be proven innocent by DNA evidence. The DNA test proved that she wasn't in Chrislyn's room at the time of the murder. The big question is, why wasn't this information provided 13 years ago? This case has been reviewed several times by myself, and I have spent several hours researching this case because there are so many questions that have left people frustrated. Unfortunately, Mr. Jack passed away in 2014, so we weren't able to ask her if we could use some of her time. However, we did get a chance to talk to her son, the brother, Edward Gerand, who was 8 at the time of the trial.
Hi, Edward. Would you prefer me to call you Ed or Edward?
I don't have a preference. Whichever you'd like to call me is fine.
I would like to thank you for being here and letting me ask you a few questions about your case.
Well, thank you for having me. It's still crazy that people are still interested in what happened to my mother and sister.
Now, how did it truly feel to have your mother be taken away from you at such a young age when you didn't really know what was going on around you? I mean, also to add, she missed you getting your license, you graduating, you getting a wife, like you having kids.
It took a toll on me. It was hard during that time not having a mother. Everyone else had a mom to make them sack lunches and help with parties at school. I didn't have that, and it did take a toll on me. And it wasn't just unfair to me, it was unfair to her also, because she didn't get to see her kids grow up. And now that I'm a parent, I can understand how truly hard that must have been for her.
Do you have any idea why the DNA evidence that eventually proved your mother innocent was not used prior to her conviction in the courtroom?
That's a good question, but I simply don't have the answer.
While trying to look for information to help me answer the question of why DNA evidence wasn't used sooner, I came across the idea that prosecutors go against using DNA evidence on the defendant's side because they claim that it can be inaccurate and invalid. I decided to ask Edward what his views were on this topic. Now, many people are against the use of DNA testing because they claim that it can be inaccurate in the use of criminal evidence. What do you have to say about that?
I think it's a joke, because I say that because no two people have the same DNA strand. And if the DNA of another person was found at the crime scene and it doesn't match anyone else's DNA, why is that not being used in court? How can that physical evidence be ruled as inaccurate?
Fortunately, that question still remains unanswered. While diving further down the rabbit hole on this case, I found crucial information that led to the exoneration of Miss Linda Jack. According to David Staba from the New York Times, evidence on the crime scene indicated that a man's DNA was present in skin cells found in a smear of blood on a wall. This shows how DNA evidence proves that Mr. Jack was not at the crime scene during the death of her daughter, and this eventually led to her proving her innocence. Again, these DNA results should have been used earlier in the case to prove an innocence of the wrongfully convicted mother, so why weren't they? Connecting back to the statements made just prior, many prosecutors don't like involving DNA evidence in cases because they claim it to be invalid. Interestingly enough, the official United States Department of Justice archives did a story about DNA evidence, and they claimed DNA can be used to identify criminals with incredible accuracy when biological evidence exists. By the same token, DNA can be used to clear suspects and to exonerate persons mistakenly accused or convicted of crimes. Department of Justice. The department provides information that completely shuts down the opposition of why DNA evidence should not be used in trial. The Department of Justice are responsible for dealing with such evidence as DNA evidence and support their proclamation that DNA evidence is accurate and reliable. My question still remains, if there is DNA testing that can prove someone innocent, why is it not being used, and why does it take 13 years for it to prove the innocent that was originally convicted guilty, not guilty, when DNA was available? Moreover, studies also prove that many DNA tests can limit the suspect list down to 1 or 2 people based solely on DNA evidence found at the scene of the crime. According to Jay Herbie of the lawdictionary.org, DNA testing is able to bring the pool of potential suspects down to one alleged offender, Herbie. DNA tests have the ability to limit the list of suspects and to support the argument of those who are guilty or those who are innocent. In Miss Linda Jack's case, and those that are similar, this helped her side because it proved her innocence. Relating back to the claim, DNA has the power to eliminate possible suspects, so it should then be used in deciphering whether someone is guilty or innocent. There's also data stating that DNA evidence found at a crime scene doesn't always match the suspect, yet the suspect is convicted anyway. On the authority of William Sessions, who was director of the FBI from 1987 to 1993, in about 30% of the cases, the DNA gathered in the investigation did not match the DNA of the suspect, Sessions. This source provides credibility as well as it raises the point that 30% of people with DNA evidence are still being convicted for crimes they didn't commit. Just imagine that, 30% of people from an average school such as Plainfield East High School, which is around 360 people, being locked up for a crime where DNA evidence proves their innocence. Unfortunately, Miss Linda Jack isn't the only one who has suffered from a false conviction, but we may hope that if DNA evidence is used as it should be in the courtroom, she could be one of the last. The innocent being convicted for crimes that they didn't even do unjustifies the so-called justice system, leaving the real victims of the crime to be the people that spend years in prison for crimes they didn't even commit, even when there was DNA evidence available. Next time on The Truth Behind the Cold Blooded.